the world. Please.
Let's change the world, yeah, yeah. Let's change the world.
Hey there, Spokane. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be when you tap in on this show. I'm Sean from the Milestones Squadcast. I have Terry Cooper with me, and we're going to be continuing our conversation on human trafficking. So Terry, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing good.
Good.
So it's been about a month or so since the last time we talked.
Yeah.
Well, not since we talked, but since we had the conversation on the show.
Sure.
What has been going on? You said you've learned a lot of things. You've been pretty active.
So yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people in the community, some legislators, Congresswoman, Kathy McMorris Rogers, but mostly talking to families and just trying to immerse myself in this topic, talking to some of the ministries that are working in restoration and rescue, and just trying to really understand the height and the depth and the breadth of this problem. And it's a big problem. It's bigger probably than we realize.
You mentioned that earlier. It's bigger than we think it is.
So I think there's a lot of statistics that are kind of tossed around out there, but one actual statistic is that Washington State is 9th in the nation for actual criminal charges
whole state?
Traffickers. Yeah, the state of Washington.
Criminal charges against traffickers.
Mm-hmm. And so that puts us in the top 10.
Wow.
So that's pretty big. And then, of course, on my heart is the child trafficking, and they're using children to lure children, which is shocking. People don't think of it that way. We also think that the majority of those being trafficked are being brought in, from other countries, maybe third world countries or underprivileged, marginalized countries, and that does happen. But 100,000 children a year go missing in the United States.
So our kids.
Our
own kids.
Our own kids.
So you mentioned, you just said that they're using kids to lure kids.
Mm-hmm. That's what it seems like is happening.
Can you explain a little bit about that, just so that the people can understand what that means and how it looks?
So I'm sure not the expert, but in our situation, and this seems to be the reoccurring theme.
Yeah, so your 13-year-old granddaughter was lured, right?
Yeah, and so again, like I said last time, it just starts with kids in the school, and they may move from school to school, they may be foster children, they may be in some generational trafficking situation, but the drugs, the alcohol, the trafficking, the violence, all of it is in there together. And so it's all through social media. Like I said before, that's rang true, and that is the tool they use, is social media and big tech. And so they lure them in as a friend, and then over a period of weeks, months, whatever it takes, and then at some point there's contact actually with somebody, and then in that meeting there's typically that child is then either drugged or given alcohol, and then a rape occurs, and then from there they're sort of brought into that, and that seems to be kind of the reoccurring theme. I'm finding that this has happened to a lot of people, even in my age, the secrets, that have happened to boys and girls, and it's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
We talked about last time, I'm thinking of forming a coalition or some way of getting all, raising awareness. What do we do? How do we come together? But I found there's a lot of really good work being done out there. I don't know that a coalition is the answer, but I know networking is.
Yeah, coming together is.
Coming together.
Yeah.
Getting to know you as a person, getting to know our representatives as people, getting to know victims as people, their families as people, and not just some organized effort that, we have to know one another. We have to love one another. We have to care about each other.
Yeah. So this is something that's going to take like a collective effort.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Not just the citizens in the community, the people, but law enforcement, politicians.
Yeah.
And so a reoccurring theme for me recently is learning and realizing the importance and the power behind our votes.
True.
So like, if
Very
we don't
true.
like what's happening in office, if we don't like what our elected officials are doing and what they appear to stand for, then we need to vote, right? We need to have more people in office that care about what's happening to our kids rather than increasing some tax bill,
Right.
right? And so I saw that on Jenny Graham's page. And because laws need to be passed. Laws need to be passed, right? Legislation. I'm still learning all about that
It's
stuff. I
all-
don't know too much
yeah.
about it, but
It's all in there together because we're all part of a community. So government has its role, you know.
yeah.
Absolutely, and they're there to, you know, for public safety for sure. And so we need to support that. There's always going to be bad actors in every situation, right? Every
Yeah.
place. So whether politics and law enforcement and community, churches everywhere. I mean, they're humanity, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it's so important that we get to know one another and we work together and that we come together as a community and start talking about this as a real problem that's happening every day, and it's happening in every school in our city every
Yeah.
day. And it can be a little difficult when you start talking about politics and voting for people. We need to get to know our representatives. We
Yeah.
don't know them as people. And so I think that's kind of where my goal is right now, is that I want to get to know, law enforcement leadership. I want to get to know my representatives better, and I want to understand what they even think about it. There's too many little sound bites and snippets out there. You can't really wrap your mind around who a person is
Yeah.
because there's so many attacks right now, so much division in the community, and we really need to strive for steering away from that division
Yeah.
and talking about what's important, what do we agree on. And I think everybody agrees that children should not be trafficking children.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees that there are bad things happening, and I have compassion for those children that are doing that because they're kids too.
What's going on in their lives? Yeah. How are
They're
they
kids
getting caught in
too.
that? Yeah.
And they don't think like adults. They're not adults in small bodies. They're being used,
Yeah.
and what's happened in their life, what happened to the people that are using them. I mean, it's
so deep and
it is. It's,
generational, like you said.
I think so.
And you mentioned unity in the community.
Yeah.
Recently, it's been on my heart that, so all of this stuff, right, again, I'm just going to keep saying it to air it out. This is all demonic. This is all the work of Satan. And I feel like I've seen it differently after just spending some time with the Lord, that us adults are so caught up, we're so busy, we're so distracted,
It's true.
bickering back and forth
It's true.
in all different areas and aspects of our community. And what is happening is we're forgetting about our kids. We're not paying attention to our kids. So all this distraction, I feel like, is another tactic by the enemy, by Satan, so that he can take another generation. And because we're not even noticing it, we're losing another generation
Right.
right underneath our eyes.
So you remember when I was here last time and I said the whole reason that this set off so many alarms, it was a tragedy, we're still working through it, but
Your
when
family.
for my family, but when I read in the newspaper, runaway girl found safe, again, it goes back to that idea. It's that kind of kid from that kind of family. You go downtown and you see the homeless kids, basically the runaway kids. That's what you think, right?
Yeah.
These are children in crisis.
In crisis.
They're children in crisis, and they need us. They need us to recognize that they're children in crisis, and they're tough to work with because they have a juvenile brain, and they're all about hooking up with their people and hooking up with their friends and doing all of this stuff.
Nobody. They don't trust authority.
Anyone because they're in crisis.
Yeah.
They have reasons why they don't trust, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Just like a lot of us adults have reasons why we don't trust or
It's hard.
we're scared to trust others,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's no different than the kids, except like their brains are not as developed, right? So they may not have the skills to cope and to process through what's going on, or they just can't. And
Well, they live in the moment, you know, that
Yeah.
juvenile brain. They live in the moment, and they don't do a great job. Their brains don't do a great job of helping them anticipate danger, anticipate long-term, you know,
Yeah,
effects of their decisions. So they're just living in the moment. And we all were
Yeah.
there. We
Yeah,
were all
oh my God.
14, 15, 16, and it's like, oh, why did, you know, I shouldn't even be alive right now because of some of the things that happened.
and that's
you know,
why
literally.
the awareness is important.
And the awareness is
for
important.
the parents, for the
Yeah, yeah.
the adults, because we can easily just be like, oh, they're just being teenagers, right? But it's different from when I was a teenager and when you were a teenager.
Right.
Because now there's this active like predator out there to snatch our kids.
I think there always has been, but it's definitely increased.
Oh, major.
And it's gone unchecked in Spokane, I believe. And funding is a problem. You know, there's divisions in the community that are the problem. All those things you talk about, you know, how sort of evil works. Yeah, keep us distracted, angry,
Divided.
You know, my program's the most important program, or your program does this and doesn't do that right, or whatever. But
pointing fingers, the blame game,
shame,
all
blame.
of that.
But you know, and it's in every circle, right? It's not just in that. But so the things on as I've been talking to all of these people, so those doing the good work, they need funding. So HRC, for example, you know, they need more housing, because even if we had a robust law enforcement, where would they go?
Yeah.
We've got to have the facilities in place so they can get that, you know.
Facilities in the programs.
Same with the rescuers, you know, those
Yeah.
doing the rescue work. Well, what good does it do to rescue someone if they don't have
Having somewhere to
a
take 'em.
transitional housing, you know, to get
Yeah.
them off and transition into and out of that lifestyle, and some place where they're truly safe, and not just still being exposed to those same people. I think about law enforcement, you know, we have to appreciate their role. We have to appreciate what they do. We have to appreciate that they're expected to know everything and do everything perfect every time. And, you know, they're in the midst of the down and dirty every day that wears on a person, and they're people.
Absolutely.
They're people.
So how are we supposed to, as the people, have a shift in our perspective when we do know that there are bad cops out there, or there are cops that have bad days or going through bad times, like
Yeah.
whatever it is. You just said they're human, right? But
Oh, it's true.
I
I
feel
mean,
like-
there's a lot of work to be done. I'm not saying that I think they're, you know, perfect or anything like that, but I think that we first have to, you know, give respect where respect is due, I suppose. But mostly just what's on my heart is that we need funding. So we need to put pressure. We need specialized task forces for specialized kinds of crime. And
Pressure.
I think they could do better work
So what do you mean
if
by
they didn't have
pressure?
to do everything. So, you know, pressure on, you know, the legislature and the county and the city to
So we
fund
need to get involved as a community, get educated on.
and support. Say, we need a task force in
Yeah,
Spokane. We need
yeah.
a 24/7 IT task force.
Yeah, defunding the police is just not going to help. It's not going to solve the problem.
They already are expected to do everything at once, but if you had specialized, you know, and of course there's all kinds of specialized, there's property crime, there's, you know, all kinds of domestic violence and you know, drug problems and gang problems and all of this, but creating those specialized task forces that focus on those specific kind of crimes, and especially with the child sex trafficking, it just seems like it's all happening on the internet. We need an IT team, we need a quick response team, you know, and I'm no police expert, but the police know what they need, and they just need the funding and the training and the tools. So when they hear 12-year-old girl goes missing or 12-year-old boy goes missing, quick response, their IT team's on it, they dispatch the police, they rescue within 24 hours,
Yeah.
and then, you know, interesting thing I found out, sometimes the traffickers report the person they're trafficking is missing so they can get him back and get him back to work.
Hold up, say that again?
So I just learned this, and I'd never thought of it before. So if I'm an adult and I'm trafficking a child and that child runs away from that situation, then if I report that child missing, where do they take the kid back to?
Where they came from.
The person maybe who was trafficking them. So, you know,
Oh my God.
sometimes it happens that way. And
What?
so I've heard some stories like that, and as I've asked more people their stories, and it's, you know, somebody had mentioned that to me recently, and so I had to ask around and say, is that really,
Does that happen?
does that really happen? It does.
Wow.
It does. It really does. And so I think we have to open our eyes,
Mhm.
take a good look at it, and not be suspicious, not be finger pointing,
Yeah, yeah.
but let's get some real police work happening. That's their job. That's
Yeah.
their job. And our job as community members is to do what's on our heart to do. And some are on the streets doing that rescue work. Some are doing the restoration work. Some are doing the counseling. Some are doing, you know, job training. Some are doing, you know, whatever your place is. But we have to all know that it's happening. We have to all know that we're all working for the same end goal,
Yeah, which is
to go after this.
Yeah, and
Right.
to protect our kids.
Exactly.
And I think, so I have a question, but I think this is probably a better question for Sheriff Ozzie or Chief Midle, but volunteers. I know that I know people would be willing to volunteer. You said IT help. I know that there'll be people that be willing to volunteer for something like that. I don't know if there's a program in the force for them for that to happen, but
There's such a, you know, I can't really speak too much to it, but I would imagine that there's a high level of liability. There's a lot of confidential information. You know, there's the vetting
That's
of all
true.
of that. I mean,
That's true.
there's a lot to it. But I don't know. I think they're best to speak to their programs and what they can do. But without the funding, they can't even
do anything.
think of something to do.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I know that they all want to. They must. They know it's a problem. They know it's serious. They care. They wouldn't be law enforcement if they didn't care. I think.
Yeah, we can't just continue to assume the worst about people
No.
just because of this happening or that happening. Like,
Right. And
because if
hope-
that's the case,
yeah.
then I'm gonna think everybody's just evil
You know,
and
when
not
you've
trust
been,
nobody.
it's true. So when you've been a victim of a crime, and as we feel we were, of course, and it's interesting that we think of the child being the victim, but it's really the whole family. And I realized as I started down this road,
Yeah,
I need to kind of step back and give myself a little bit of time to process and heal also. So, you know, people want to hear the story, they want to know, they want to understand, they want to help, they care, but it's really hard to keep telling the story. And how much more, you know, we need to protect victims from having to tell that story. They don't need to tell their story, they need to be ministered to in a very deep and long way, meaningful way.
yeah.
So we have to, you know, it's fragile. People are fragile.
Yeah, it's such a delicate situation.
It is. It's
all,
painful.
all around, and
Yeah.
I don't really know. I don't think anybody really knows what's gonna work, but
God does.
only God does. That's right. And so we can't do it without Him.
Yeah.
We can't do it without Jesus.
I think.
And we
that's
can't do it if we don't get up to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knows what needs to happen. I think as we are willing to
Mm-hmm.
take a step, He'll guide our steps, right? And He'll lead us to where we need to be. He knows, He has the plan for it.
He
we
does.
just got to be in tune with Him.
Mm-hmm.
And we can continue to try to do life as a community without Jesus Christ, But look at the mess we're in right now when we turned away and the separation between church and state has happened, right? And God was taken out of the education system, taken out of the government. Look at what's happening.
So I was thinking about that, and it's like, again, I think it's important, and this is where I'm at personally, is just I need to understand more about loving my neighbor. And love is, if you have not love, you're just making a bunch of noise. You're a clanging gong, right? If I have not love, I'm nothing. And if I have not love, there's no gain. We can't make any strides toward changing things if we don't begin to love people. And so I was reading a book recently and talking about that. And human love, usually, even in its best form, is
Flawed.
Because I love you because I admire something about you. I see something, and there's something
attached
in
to
you
it.
that makes me feel better or look better, right? That's human love, so I can help in these situations because I feel like I'm doing some good deed. And that's nothing wrong with that. That's just our humanity. But when you aspire to a higher form of love, and it's about service, and it's about truly giving without expecting anything in return, and realizing that anything that you have that I admire, I can admire that, but it's not mine to take. It's not mine to use, and it's not mine to have.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of the way I'm processing it as I'm working through these circles. It's like I need to understand more about serving, and loving people, inspiring them to their best person that they can be. And I think everyone's being called to do something, and I've heard it said before, so what do you have in your hand, right? What do you have it right there in front of you that you already do, that you already like to do, that you're already is in your sphere? So do that.
We all have something.
Maybe you can share it, talk
that we
about
can
it,
contribute.
post it, volunteer. I don't know. Everyone has to decide for themselves, but
Right.
yeah.
So as you started talking about love, I'm gonna do something I've never done on the show, because I feel like that is the answer, is love.
It is.
There's not
There's no program.
When I was I was about 15 when I turned away from love. And I didn't know that when I did that, I was turning away from God. And everything that I used back then, the walls that I used to build walls around me to protect myself, that nobody was going to ever get close enough again to me to hurt me.
Right.
Those walls 20 plus years later were the very same walls that imprisoned me, and I was not free
Exactly.
to be who I was created to be. At that time in my life, when I was older, 25 years later, I wanted love. I wanted to trust. I couldn't, because those very same things that I thought protected me when I was a kid were now the very things that imprisoned me.
Right. Exactly.
And they don't just come down because, okay,
don't.
God, I'm ready to be free now. Like, no, it don't.
It didn't happen overnight, and it's not healed
It's not going to
overnight.
go away overnight. So I want to read from the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the
Perfect.
love chapter,
Perfect.
right?
Yeah.
Because right now there's so much division. Human love fails
Yeah.
because we're human, right? So I'm going to read that real quick. 1 Corinthians 13, chapter 13, verse 4. Love endures with patience and serenity. Love is kind and thoughtful and is not jealous or envious. Love does not brag and is not proud or arrogant. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not provoked, nor overly sensitive and easily angered. It does not take into account a wrong endured. It does not rejoice at injustice, but rejoices with the truth when right and truth prevail. Love bears all things, regardless of what comes, believes all things, looking for the best in each one, hopes all things, remaining steadfast during difficult times, and endures all things without weakening. Love never fails. It never fades nor ends.
That's right.
So
That's right. And that's the beginning of that chapter starts off, I can do all of these things. If I speak in the tongues of angels and I, can experience all miracles, and I had all knowledge, and I had all wisdom, and if I could solve the world's problems, right? But if I don't have love,
I have nothing.
I am nothing.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to give. It's just about me.
Yeah.
Right? So
That's
we
right.
make a lot of noise to get attention for me,
Mm-hmm.
and we, do a lot of things to get attention for me, but I think as a community, we need to look our attention onto the problem and see that these are children. Just like we were children. I was raised in a military family, very abusive home. I have a very difficult past. And, by the grace of God, I've been so blessed. I mean, beyond my wildest dreams, really. I have a good life. And not that it hasn't been difficult, but I have a good life, and I thank God for that. But what brought me to the Lord was I was 17 years old, and all of this life had happened, right? None of it was, we had some good, but there was a lot of, every day it was something, right?
Yeah.
It was very difficult. And that's another story for another time. But when I came, somebody talked to me about the Lord. And they said, Jesus died for you. So I heard that. And I'm like, I didn't really get what that meant, And, what does it mean really?
Yeah.
I didn't get that part. But he said, but God loves you. He loved you so much that he let his son stand in your place and take the punishment for all the wrong that you've done. He took that for you. And that won me over.
Did you understand what that meant?
I totally understood. The Lord just revealed that deep in my heart, that
Even back then?
the love of God, that he loved me. And I'd never felt that before.
Yeah.
I never had felt that before.
Yeah.
I never felt I had someone in my corner, someone on my side, someone who loved me despite all of my, in my 17-year-old mind, the horrible things I'd done, right? And the horrible person I was, because that's what the enemy just beats him down. And that's what I see with these children. The enemy has convinced them, and these workers of evil have convinced them that they're worthless. That's who you are now. You're just a piece of trash. You're here to be used. You're here, you're nothing to anybody. And that's not true.
Yeah.
That is not true. Because God said that he will leave the 99 to go find the one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did for me.
Yeah.
He left the 99, and I did. I felt so special that day, like the heavens parted, and I was the only person, coming to Christ that day.
Yeah.
And, and I've
Heaven had a party for you.
absolutely, and they're gonna have a party for you and a party for all of these kids. And I think that when we come together as a community, we'll know it, because nobody can resist the love of God.
No,
He's irresistible.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Even if you don't understand it, you can't resist it.
I don't know that we ever understand it, really. We
No, we don't,
experience
yeah.
it. We're always there's always more.
Yeah. I'm looking for something that UGM posted recently. I don't know if I'm going to find it. Something to the effect that it's so hard to heal a broken man, but it's much easier to get him as a child, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason I say
It's true.
So
I think that's so true.
love and trust have been my biggest issues my whole life.
Yeah.
And I've never known how to allow somebody to love me,
Mm-hmm.
not even God,
Mm-hmm.
until just in the last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm 41,
Yeah.
right? And I've been walking with Christ for 7 years, but even that whole time, I couldn't understand that he loved me that much. And I always felt like I had to earn that love.
Right.
That I had to do this and this so that he will continue to love me and not leave me.
Right.
And the only reason I'm sharing this is because if we don't get to these kids now,
Yeah.
the pain and the struggle. The reason our country is the way it is now is right now at this very moment is because we've turned away from it. We didn't pay attention to what was happening 20, 30 years ago.
That's true.
40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, I believe that's true.
And so it's getting worse as as each generation progresses. It's getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like it's all a cry for help.
It is.
The increase in gang violence, the increase in human trafficking, the increase in teenage domestic violence, it's all a cry for help.
Mm-hmm.
Something's broken in these kids' lives.
It
They're
is.
not getting something that they need, or a lot of things that they need.
Right.
And the way that God showed it to me was like a child or a baby when they act out because they're not getting what they want or they're not getting what they need.
Mm-hmm.
A baby needs to be fed or it needs his diaper changed, and they're being neglected. They're gonna cry.
Mm-hmm.
And a toddler and up, like you see the behavior
Mm-hmm.
when they're not getting what they want or they're not getting what they need,
Right.
and they're not able to communicate and express that.
Right.
So these kids are acting out, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cry for help, and
is.
we're missing it. We're not hearing it because we're so caught up in, oh God, I hate COVID. I just want to go out and hang out and have my life back. And a generation of kids are dying. They have no voice, and I can hear it.
Yeah.
Help.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're down there, in the midst of them, and
Does anybody hear?
yeah.
Does anybody know I'm not around?
Do you see me?
Yes.
When the riots broke out last year, about this time last year, actually, and so I was looking. My husband and I were watching on TV, and we both came from some pretty rough places, and so we see all these teenage kids just running around, just mayhem, right? And I noticed this little girl, she's probably 15 or so. She's got this little half top on, and she's with her boyfriend, and they're just thinking they're so cool, right? And they're running all around and really doing some damage, and just angry, violent. And I'm watching all of this on TV as it's being filmed, and I looked at my husband and I said, had this happened when we were teenagers, we would have been right there in the middle of them.
Yeah.
I know we would have. And you want to know why? Because it's like, does anybody see me? Look what I can do.
Yeah.
Wake up people.
Yeah.
And that's all. That stuck with me since watching that. I thought, yeah, it is a cry. It is a cry for help. I think it's a cry of our community that there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And we have to love. I remember being terrified of God and terrified of all authority. That's kind of where I came from, with the abuse that had happened in my family. Just terrified. And when I first came to the Lord, I remember the pastor saying, "Good morning" to me. And I went in the bathroom and I cried through the whole service because he spoke to me so kindly. I didn't know how to,
How to receive that,
how to receive
respond
it.
to it.
Mm-hmm. And so then it was a few years later that the Lord, I feel like I'm still learning the lessons of love, right? And so I remember the Lord speaking to me one time, and he said, "Practice this." And it just kind of came into my mind, not the audible voice, but it was, practice this. Think of me, think of like holding up your arms to me. That's kind of like a funnel. So if you put that funnel down in your heart, and you let that smallest part of the funnel go into your heart, and he said, let me in to your heart. And I was like, it's pretty dark in there. I don't even go there.
Yeah.
I don't even go there. I was
Yeah.
like, God, I can't let you in because I don't even go. I don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
And he's just started talking to me about trusting him. So I did. So for about 2 weeks, every day I made myself say it out loud. I'd say, Jesus, I want to trust you. I'm holding my heart open, and I want you to have access to every part of my heart. And so I just kept praying that. I was probably like 22 years old. And so I just kept asking the Lord to do that. And it's like, no, I'm going to keep my heart open. I know I can trust you. You can't hurt me. You won't harm me. You're God. You're good. So I'm talking to myself like this, right? And more convincing myself than, And so yeah, we had a missionary had come to church, was, you know, I don't even know what he talked about, but it was really good. And I just remember it was during a missions convention thing, and you know, there was like this little, you know, let's come forward for prayer thing, and I did that, and the Lord said, remember that funnel? And I was like, yeah, Lord, I hold my heart open to you. I really want you to just do whatever you're going to do. I want you to have access to all the dark places of my heart. And in my mind's eye, it was like a light just came down, and when it hit, it filled that funnel. When it hit the bottom, it just went boom, and I was just felt like my whole body just got filled with this light, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, in my mind's eye, of course, and it was just so good. And you know, I cried and cried, and it was like, Lord, from that time on, I really began to understand that I could trust God. And you know, sometimes I still struggle with that.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Trust is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to, it goes all the way back around to, if I don't know you, how will you ever trust me?
Yeah.
If I don't know you, how do I ever trust you?
That's right.
So if I don't know Ozzy and Chief Meidel and, you know, Nadine and all of our legislators and people in leadership, you know, and the county commissioners and the people who are doing the restoration work and the people who are doing, and the people in my church and the people in my neighborhood, if I don't take the time to know you,
Mm-hmm.
how will we ever trust one another? If we don't
Yeah.
trust one another, how do we
Yeah.
ever love one another, right?
Yeah.
So
We
that's
all got to
kinda-
be willing to risk being transparent with one another.
Yeah.
Vulnerable.
That's
Vulnerability.
I bet you've heard that a lot.
So many times. And to
So good.
like, for me to expect you to open up and share who you are with me, I got to be willing to open up and share who I am with you,
Yeah.
right? And so that we can begin to build a relationship.
Right. And so if you're living in, if you've had the abuse, like it sounds like we both have had, and you're living in that shame of it, once the light is shown on it, it loses its power. And you
Yeah.
realize that there are a lot of other people who've experienced the same thing, and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not that big of a deal.
yeah, yeah.
We all fall short in many ways. It's, you know, but that the power is in the secret,
Mm-hmm.
and in that secret is the lie that it's you're the only one, you're dirtier, you're guiltier, you're worse
That's
than.
all from Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, and it's like no, we've all been through some stuff, right?
Yeah, we just had a moment on the air, kind of, and God gets all the glory. I want to bring it back in and share, like, so whatever issues us people as the people are having, the adults, right, like that are preventing us from being able to move forward,
Yeah.
to bring unity in our community and healing to our community. God will heal that,
He will.
because we can't do anything when we're not healed like that, right? Like,
It's so true.
I've done excuse me, I've done a lot of work, charity work, serving in the community as a believer, still broken, still not healed, still not giving all the brokenness to God, still not trusting Him, right? And so none of that stuff even matters, because I ended up being an abusive husband, and I ruined my marriage, and I lost my family. So it doesn't matter how much good you do when you still are not surrendering those broken places in your heart to God. He can't heal that. You're going to go back.
If I have not love,
I have nothing.
I gain nothing.
Yeah. So we can't do nothing to save our kids if we're not willing to do the work ourselves on ourselves and allow God to do what He can only do, right? So this is the whole like idea of cultural transformation, because while we're still working on ourselves and we're not even willing, if we're not willing to face ourselves,
Yeah.
we're not going to be paying attention to what's going on in our kids' lives.
Right.
And if we're discouraged or concerned or worried, or we don't even care, whatever it is, about the condition of our society today, this day, if we don't do anything about what's happening to our kids right now, 15, 20, 30, 40 years later, it's going to be so much worse.
Yeah.
Because it's worse now than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Right. Well, anytime you leave something unchecked, you know,
It just grows.
It grows.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's
The
time
infection
to,
spreads.
yeah. So we just got to do more to link arms together, push back, and you know, be ready and willing to solve those problems and have those hard conversations and be compassionate and gentle with one another. You know,
Yeah.
people are fragile. You know,
Yeah.
we see a lot of anger and a lot of, you know,
Yeah, there's a lot of offense.
a lot of offense out there, but you know, we have to.
A lot of wrong has been done to people.
It's true.
And we, speaking for me, being a recovering abuser, right, and a former gang member, a former drug dealer, we need to be humble enough to say, I'm sorry, I did that. I was wrong. No excuses, no reasons. I was wrong.
Right.
I mean, there's a difference between excuses and reasons. There's a reason, but none of that matters. You have to just take
Well, you know what
ownership.
you know what an excuse is? It's a lie wrapped up in a reason.
Right, exactly. I've never heard it like that, but you're right. I need to be able to acknowledge what I did was wrong, take ownership of what I did, right?
Yeah.
And be accountable for what I did. So there's a lot, people are pointing fingers everywhere.
Yeah.
Politicians have been doing wrong, the churches have been doing wrong, parents have been doing wrong, the cops have been doing wrong. All of us have done some type of wrong, right?
Surprise. You know, well, surprise, surprise, we're all sinners, right? And so we've all fallen short. We've all fallen short of
Which
the
is why we
glory.
need a savior.
Yeah, it's not about being perfect and being somebody else's version of what kind of perfect you should be. We get into a weird cycle that way, but it's truly loving one another.
Yeah.
You know, loving one another. And when you talk about racial transformation, my dad was very racist, and my mom was not. It caused a lot of conflict in the family too because of that. But when I became an adult, I had purposed in my heart that I wanted to go to a black church, right? And we're in Spokane, and you know, we're not. I think then it was maybe 7 or 8% of the population was black. And so, yeah, so I decided I was going to go to this black church. Me and two of my friends, we took our kids, and we were the only white people in the church, right? And it's a great experience. I remember we came in, and I was terrified. Just from this unknown, these are people I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so then, you know, but God was doing a great thing. And so we come in and we sit down, and then here's all these little black faces lined up in a row, turned around looking at us, you know, like, who are these people, right?
Why are they here?
And
Where
oh
they
my
come
God,
from?
yeah. And I'm sure they're scared, we're scared, we don't know. And it was such a funny thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I afraid? What am I afraid of, you know? And it was just, it was real. And so we stayed there the whole rest of the time. The pastor was here, and then he went back to Georgia to pastor a church there. But I loved him, he loved me. We just grew into such a close relationship with him and his family, and
Wow.
it was just one of the best healings that I've ever had. And he shared, you know, his terror. He was terrified when we came in, believe it or not.
Wow.
He goes, I've been praying to God for years that, you know, that I would be able to pastor, you know, multiracial church. And so anyway, he shared his story, and I won't share it now. It was super tragic. But, you know, we cried together and became great friends, and, you know, I just, to this day, have such love and affection for for his family. And then later, the Lord ended up calling us to go to Rwanda and Uganda, and my husband and I worked about 6 years working with displaced people after the genocide in Rwanda, and then also the LRA and the, you know, the tribal warfare there that had happened. And I'll tell you, it just comes down to love, loving people. People. Don't let people put you in a category. We're people. We're the same.
Yeah. One race.
And so that's what brought the healing to Rwanda after the terrible genocide. The president there said, we're no longer Hutu and Tutsi, we're Rwandans. We're one people.
You said we're the same.
We're the same. And it was actually, colonialism that had come in, and they separated the people and said, you are now this and you are now this, and here's how we're going to make this distinction. And it was pretty horrible, and it caused all this division, all this, you have this upper class, lower class, and I want us to just be Americans. I want us to be Spokanites. I want us to know that I care what happened to you.
Yeah.
That we care, and that we, meaning both ways, no matter who I meet as a person, I need to care about that person. And I'm working on it. Humanity, right?
Yeah.
I get in my own way sometimes.
Me too.
So, but so that's my hope, is that we can begin to network, work together, learn, grow together, and bring about the awareness of this problem, save the kids. But we've got to have a task force. We have to have a rescue team. We have to have a restoration team. And
we have to come together.
It's got to be a quick response. And we've got to hold big tech accountable.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot let this... They have every tool they need to monitor what goes across every server.
Yeah, they do. They've been deleting a lot of my posts. The last episode I did was racial reconciliation, and they deleted that post 5 or 6 times.
Oh.
Every time I posted it came down. I would look back later, and it would be gone. And I'm like, what are they doing?
Well, and a little transparency about what is your standard and what seems to be, So I think there's a lot of work to be done there for sure.
Yeah.
But
that's accountability, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I just got the look. We got 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So before we...
Well, thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. It's always good to have somebody here in person with me to talk, so I'm not talking at a TV screen or something.
Sometimes I forget we're on the TV because I just, get
That's how
caught
it's
up in the conversation.
That's how it's supposed to be, so it can be real. This is real stuff, real life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it gets messy, it gets ugly sometimes, but it also gets good. It can get good, and it can continue to get better, but we gotta not be afraid of the hard stuff, doing hard things, right? And having these tough conversations, and being able to be vulnerable and shed some tears if we feel that emotional about something, right? That strongly about something. There's so much healing that's needed in our community, and it is not something that a doctor can prescribe or a counselor. Like they're great. I'm not against none of that. They're all appointed by God, and He's the healer.
Right.
He's the one that does the healing.
Well, we all have, it's all.
And the miracles. So it's going to need to be a miracle, but He's the miracle worker. He's the chain breaker. He's the way maker.
Yes,
right? And so none of it is going to be. And when I talk about Jesus, I'm not trying to push out or exclude anybody else who has a different faith or belief, or they don't, whatever. I don't care what it is. Like, God loves all of them, so I love all of them.
Right. Well, and I think that's the power of, the life of Jesus. When you look back historically, that was His message. It was a complete social culture shift when He came on the scene. I mean, He just blew it up because...
He turned it on His head.
He turned it on His head, and it's like, no matter what, okay, you think that this is how God is, well, actually, no, it isn't, love God, love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Everything hangs on love.
Man. That's
love
right.
your neighbor as yourself. And who's my neighbor? Well, everybody you see.
That's right.
We're all on this globe together, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would you want to share, like some last thoughts before we end this conversation?
Be looking for ways that you can connect on how we can raise the awareness of this problem in Spokane. And when you hear about it, engage with that, learn about it, talk about it, and be willing to participate in the solution wherever the Lord would lead you to do that. So we all have a role to play. It's no one person can solve this. The Lord is orchestrating a healing in our community. I believe that.
Yeah.
I really do believe that.
Yeah.
And that would be my word, is that I would just really hope that you know, whoever might see this, that you would ask the Lord, or you know, look inside yourself and say, what can I do? How can I be a part of the change?
How can I help? Yeah.
Yeah.
My question here on the show is, are we part of the problem or are we part of the solution?
Mm-hmm.
Do we follow the example or do we set the example?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I feel that Spokane is unique enough where we can come together and unite to get some things done in our community, to bring healing in our community.
Absolutely.
The model is broken, and God can create a new model that can be shared around the country.
It's
Here in
grassroots.
Spokane.
Absolutely. It's always the grassroots that movements that win, you know, and so love as a grassroots movement.
Ha! Love as a grassroots movement. That's it. Thank you for tuning in on the Milestones Squadcast. Be sure to spread this video, please. We need to raise the awareness of human trafficking, how they're doing it, what it looks like, and what are the lasting effects on our kids. It's for the kids. If we're not doing it for our kids, then what are we doing it for?
Yeah, it's always the next generation.
Yeah. So we're going to leave it at that. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tapped in for the next show. Thank you.